Welcome to today's deep dive. Usually when we talk about success or finding peace or just personal growth, there's this underlying expectation of comfort.
Right, yeah. Like it's the ultimate goal.
Exactly. It's framed like this warm blanket, like you work really hard, you buy the nice couch, you get the climate-controlled car, and you find your safe space.
And society basically just points at that and says, you made it, you can just relax now.
Right. But if you drop David Goggins into that comfortable climate-controlled life, he just sees a prison.
Oh, absolutely. He sees a coffin with the lid cracked open.
Yeah. So today, we are completely dismantling the modern obsession with comfort. We are opening what is essentially a tactical manual for the militarization of the human mind.
Because, whether you are studying for a massive medical exam or trying to build a business, or you're just sitting there listening to this feeling entirely stuck in a rut.
Without a ladder. Yeah.
Exactly. This deep dive into the sources surrounding Goggins' life is going to systematically challenge every single excuse you've ever made.
It really is a complete disruption of the narrative we're fed from birth, because society constantly preaches that happiness is just the absence of suffering.
Right. I mean, we've literally engineered friction out of our lives. We have apps to deliver our food, algorithms to curate our entertainment,
Yeah, the whole culture just tells us to avoid pain at absolutely all costs.
But the life detailed in these sources proves the exact opposite. His story is a testament to the idea that true peace and that kind of unshakable confidence most people only dream of is only found by voluntarily stepping into the fire.
Which is wild to think about. It's about mastering your own pain rather than running from it.
Precisely.
But, to understand how a man can eventually run 100 miles on broken legs or endure Navy SEAL Hell Week 3 separate times, we can't just start with the superhero.
No, you have to start at the bottom.
Right, we have to start with the boy who was completely broken in spirit. We have to go back to 1981 to Williamsville, which is a suburb of Buffalo, New York.
And this is where the myth of the privileged start is just entirely shattered.
Totally. Because people usually view the starting line of life as zero. Like you're born, you're at zero, and you work your way up.
But looking at these sources, David Goggins started at negative 1,000.
Yeah, that's not even an exaggeration. The contrast between the public facade of his family and their private reality is, it's just staggering.
It really is. To the outside world, the Goggins family looked like the absolute epitome of the American dream. They lived in this really nice neighborhood.
And his dad, Toughness, owned a business, right?
Yeah, a roller skating rink called Skateland in the Maston district. And from the street, Skateland was this neon-lit, thumping hub of culture.
Like a real hotspot.
Exactly. Celebrities came through constantly, Rick James, O.J. Simpson, local politicians. Toughness was always smiling, wearing these custom suits, looking like the ultimate successful businessman.
But the reality behind those neon lights, 6-year-old David, his older brother, and his mother were essentially operating as forced labor.
Basically slaves to Toughness's ambition.
Yeah. Picture this. David is in the first grade. He should be, playing with blocks and learning the alphabet.
Right, just being a kid.
But instead, he's working until midnight or 1 a.m. every single night.
Spraying down sweaty rental skates.
Exactly. His brother's running the concession stand, his mother is cooking in the kitchen, and Toughness. He's just up in the DJ booth, playing the music, acting like the king of the castle.
And pocketing every single dime, of course.
Right.
And Toughness deliberately structured their lives to ensure he had total control. He never legally married David's mother, which ensured she had no marital assets, no bank account of her own, and absolutely zero legal leverage.
Wow. So she was completely trapped.
Entirely.
Yeah.
But it wasn't just the sheer physical exhaustion of child labor that defined his early years. It was the environment of the house itself.
Yeah, the sources describe it as a toxic, adrenaline-soaked fog.
That's a good way to put it. Toughness was heavily involved in illicit activities, affairs, prostitution, operating out of the rink.
And the discipline he doled out wasn't just strict. It was calculated, sadistic physical abuse.
The details in the text are just horrifying. He beat them with leather belts, extension cords.
And he would draw out the psychological terror, too. Like he would make young David take his clothes off and lie face down on the bed in complete darkness, just waiting.
Just lying there in the dark.
Yeah. The door would be closed, the room pitch black, and David would just lie there, his heart hammering against his ribs, waiting to hear the door hinge creak, waiting for the crack of the belt.
And the psychological toll of that waiting is profound.
Right.
We have to look at what this actually does to a developing brain.
Right. The neuroscience of it.
Exactly. When a child is constantly in an environment of unpredictable, severe violence, where there is literally a loaded gun kept on the mattress where David sleeps, their brain becomes locked in a perpetual state of fight or flight.
Wait, let's pause on the neurology for a second. So I want to make sure I really understand this.
Yeah.
Is this why the sources mentioned he was functionally illiterate by the time he was in the 3rd grade?
Yeah. Yes, exactly.
So the trauma was actually blocking his ability to learn.
Biologically, that is exactly what happens. Toxic stress hijacks the brain's architecture. The amygdala, which is the brain's threat detection center, becomes hyperreactive and physically enlarged.
Wow.
Meanwhile, the constant flood of cortisol and adrenaline actually inhibits the development of the prefrontal cortex and the hippocampus. And those are the exact areas responsible for language acquisition, memory retention, and logical reasoning.
That is wild. So his brain wasn't broken. It was perfectly adapted for surviving a war zone.
Right. But a brain adapted for a war zone cannot sit in a quiet classroom and learn to read cursive. It is too busy scanning the room for the next threat.
That makes so much sense. It wasn't a learning disability in the traditional sense.
Yeah.
His brain was just prioritizing survival over phonics.
Exactly.
And the physical manifestations of this stress were everywhere. I mean, the sources note that he developed a severe stutter, so he couldn't even articulate his fear.
His hair started falling out in clumps, too.
Yeah, and he developed patches of vitiligo, where his immune system was so stressed, it began attacking his own pigment cells, leaving white patches on his skin.
It's just devastating.
And there's one specific story from Buffalo that perfectly encapsulates this absolute disregard for his humanity.
You're talking about the ear infection.
Yes, exactly. So David is a young kid, and he gets a severe inner ear infection. Anyone who has had one knows it is blinding, throbbing pain.
It's agonizing.
Right, and he is screaming in agony. But Toughness refuses to spend a single dime on doctors or medical insurance. He absolutely forbids them from going to the hospital.
Because it would cost money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Finally, his mother, seeing blood and pus physically draining from David's ear, decides she just cannot watch her son suffer anymore. She defies Toughness and takes him to the emergency room.
And what did the doctor say?
The doctor tells her point blank that if they had waited even a few more hours, the infection would have ruptured his eardrum permanently. He would have gone completely deaf in that ear.
But, survival in that house always came with a horrific tax.
Always.
When they returned from the hospital, Toughness realized he had been disobeyed. So he immediately began beating David's mother relentlessly.
Awful.
And when young David, this sick, terrified little boy, stepped in to try and protect his mom, his father picked him up and threw him down a flight of wooden stairs.
Just threw his own kid down the stairs for the crime of receiving medical care. It is almost unfathomable.
Yeah.
But thankfully, this is where the mother realizes they are going to die if they stay. She orchestrates this desperate escape with the help of a neighbor.
She quietly gets a credit card, right?
Yeah, she acquires a credit card, waits for Toughness to leave for the rink, and they pack whatever they can carry into a beat-up car and just flee.
And they drive through the night, the car breaks down, they hide out in a hotel, terrified he's tracking them.
It's like a movie. But eventually they make it to David's grandparents in a tiny town called Brazil, Indiana.
But if you were listening to this expecting the triumphant music to swell and the happy ending to begin, you need to recalibrate.
Yeah, absolutely. Because they escaped the immediate, acute physical violence of Toughness, but they plunged straight into chronic, crushing poverty.
Right. They moved into a government-subsidized shack that costs $7 a month.
$7. That tells you everything about the condition of the place.
Exactly. And beyond the poverty, Brazil, Indiana, in the 1980s, introduced a new public trauma, which was intense systemic racism.
Right. At the time, they were one of the very few black families in the area.
Yeah, David was thrust into an environment where he was entirely alienated, and the hostility wasn't subtle at all.
It was incredibly visceral. He would find death threats written in his notebooks at school.
Just casual death threats.
Yeah, the sources mention one specific incident where he opened his Spanish workbook to find a racial slur scribbled inside, followed by the words, "We're going to kill you," complete with spelling errors.
He even had grown men pull firearms on him just for existing in the wrong space.
So you have a child who has survived horrific domestic violence, who is now living in deep poverty and is facing daily public threats on his life. How does a child's mind cope with being told by the entire world that he is worthless?
Well, It creates a fracture in the identity. The text explains that David developed what psychologists call a false self.
A false self.
Yeah, when your authentic self is constantly under attack, constantly terrified, and constantly told it is stupid and unwanted, you create an avatar to take the hits for you. For David, this avatar was the class clown.
You know, it reminds me of someone putting on a brightly colored suit of armor that's just completely hollow inside. Like he acted out, he made jokes, he was loud, all to distract from the fact that he was functionally illiterate.
Precisely. The educational system failed him completely. Instead of recognizing the signs of profound trauma, they just wanted to label him.
Right, sweep it under the rug.
He had one teacher who genuinely tried to help, but the others just wanted him shipped off to a special school so he wouldn't be their problem anymore.
Yeah, he was thrown into group therapy sessions with children who had severe neurological deficits, kids who were banging their heads against the wall.
And he was quickly diagnosed with ADHD and prescribed Ritalin to make him compliant. But, the pills couldn't fix the fact that he couldn't read.
So his false self adapted again. He became a master of cheating. He copied homework. He memorized the patterns of standardized tests by looking over shoulders.
He built an entire architecture of deception just to survive the school day without being exposed.
But the tragic irony of the false self is that while it protects you from the outside world, it destroys you from the inside.
Because you're faking it.
Exactly. Deep down, behind the jokes and the cheating, David completely believed he was exactly what his father and the racist town told him he was. A dumb, worthless mistake destined for absolutely nothing.
And the statistics, the cold, hard data of sociology say a kid with this specific cocktail of trauma ends up dead or in a penitentiary.
Yeah, and for a very long time, it looked like the statistics were going to be dead right.
We see this play out as he drifts into his late teens and early 20s. He makes a brief attempt to change his trajectory by joining the Air Force straight out of high school.
Because his grandfather had been in the military, so it seemed like a lifeline.
Right. He wanted to become a pararescueman, which is elite special operations, but the trauma hadn't been resolved. It had just been buried.
And when he was introduced to the water confidence tests and training, his deep-seated fear just took over.
He was completely terrified of the water, he didn't know how to swim properly, and being submerged triggered massive panic attacks.
And instead of confronting that fear, he found an out, didn't he?
He did. During a routine medical screening, he was diagnosed with sickle cell trait. Now, many people with sickle cell trait serve and operate normally, but the doctors gave him the option to leave the training pipeline without a dishonorable discharge.
And he seized it.
Yeah, he used a medical anomaly as an excuse to quit because the suffering and the fear were just too much.
Which brings us to the absolute rock bottom, the lowest point of his life. Let's fast forward a few years. David Goggins is in his mid-20s. He is out of the military, drifting through life with zero purpose.
He gets a job with Ecolab as an exterminator.
Right. His life consists of driving around in the middle of the night to nasty, grease-stained fast food restaurants, spraying toxic chemicals under fryers to kill cockroaches.
And physically, he has ballooned to 297 pounds.
He is a hair's breadth away from 300 pounds.
Exactly. And his nightly routine is what the text vividly describes as a sugar-coated suicide.
Oh man, the milkshake.
Yeah, he would finish his grim shift killing bugs, drive to a local 7-Eleven and buy a massive chocolate milkshake and an entire box of mini powdered donuts.
And he would just go back to his cheap apartment, sit on his couch in the glow of the television, and just consume it all. He was deeply depressed, utterly lost, and quite literally eating himself into an early grave to numb the agonizing pain of his own existence.
He was entirely trapped in the gravitational pull of his own comfort zone.
The comfort of junk food.
The comfort of isolation. The comfort of his own excuses. He had convinced himself that he was the ultimate victim of his circumstances.
And honestly, if you objectively look at the first 20 years of his life, he had an incredibly strong case for being a victim. No one would have blamed him for just fading away.
True. But then comes the moment of ignition. It's the turning point that alters the course of human endurance history.
It's so cinematic. He's sitting on his couch, shaking, with donuts in his hand, mindlessly flipping channels, and he happens to land on a Discovery Channel documentary.
It's a special about Navy SEAL Class 224 going through Hell Week.
He sits there, transfixed. He watches these young men enduring sheer agony. They're locked arm in arm in the freezing Pacific surf. They are carrying massive inflatable boats on their heads while instructors scream at them.
They are covered in sand, shivering, bleeding, and yet...
they're refusing to quit.
Yeah.
Something deep inside the 300-pound exterminator just snaps.
The contrast in that room must have been deafening to him. He is watching men on a screen who have intentionally mastered pain.
And he looks down at his own massive lethargic body, his hands covered in powdered sugar, and he realizes he is a man who is entirely mastered by pain.
He realizes that his excuses, however valid they might have been in the past, were currently the exact things killing him.
So he's sitting there staring at the TV, realizing the comfort he's built is actually a coffin. But, realizing it on the couch doesn't change anything.
No, action does.
He had to force a confrontation with himself, and he chose the most unavoidable place in the house, which was the bathroom mirror.
The accountability mirror?
Yes. He walks in, flips on the harsh overhead light, looks his reflection dead in the eye, and executes what the text calls the accountability mirror. He didn't use the soft language we are so accustomed to today.
Not at all.
He didn't look in the mirror and say, "You're trying your best. Life has been hard to you." He told himself the brutal, unfiltered, acidic truth. He said, "You are fat. You are lazy. You are a liar. You are uneducated."
And this concept is incredibly abrasive, especially when viewed through the lens of modern culture. Right now, there is a massive societal push toward toxic positivity.
For sure. Protect your peace at all costs.
Exactly. We are constantly told to protect our egos, to practice self-care by avoiding harsh truths, and to affirm ourselves unconditionally. But Goggins argues that protecting your ego is a lethal anesthetic.
A lethal anesthetic. Wow.
Yeah, it keeps you feeling warm and fuzzy while your life rots away from the inside.
I look at it like debugging computer code. Like if I have a massive software glitch that is crashing my entire system, I can't fix it by running a program that tells the computer it is perfect just the way it is.
Right, that won't fix the bug.
I have to run a diagnostic. I have to find the broken lines of code, highlight them in bright, flashing red, and admit they are broken before I can meticulously rewrite them. The accountability mirror is essentially a diagnostic tool for the human soul.
That is a perfect analogy. The mirror doesn't care about your feelings, and it certainly doesn't care about your tragic backstory. The mirror only reflects raw data.
Yeah.
And Goggins took this a step further. He started writing his goals on Post-it notes and sticking them to the glass. But they weren't vague aspirational goals like be happier or try harder.
They were tactical.
Tactical, non-negotiable directives. Lose weight, study for the ASVAB, go for a run.
And every single morning and every single night, he had to stand in front of that mirror and answer to those pieces of paper.
Yeah.
He had to hold himself accountable for the microactions of his day.
So, to everyone listening right now, I think we should pose a direct question.
Yeah, go for it.
How often do you sugarcoat your own reflection? When you look at your career, your relationships, your health, are you applying a fluffy PR spin to hide the cracks?
That's a tough question.
If you are not where you want to be, the first step is to find your own dirty mirror. Face the raw, unedited data of your life.
Because the moment you strip away the excuses and admit the ugly truth, you establish a baseline. You finally know exactly where zero is.
But for Goggins, establishing his baseline meant confronting a mathematical reality that bordered on the impossible.
Oh, the math. We have to talk about the math because it is terrifying. He decides he wants to become a Navy SEAL. He walks into a recruiter's office weighing 297 pounds.
And the recruiter laughs him out of the room.
Of course. But eventually, he finds one who gives him the cold, hard numbers. Based on his height, the Navy's maximum allowable weight for him to even enter the training pipeline is 191 pounds.
And here is the kicker. The next BUDS class basic underwater demolition SEAL training starts in less than 3 months.
He had to drop 106 pounds in roughly 90 days.
From a purely physiological standpoint, most doctors would tell you that is impossible, or at the very least, it is highly dangerous and will result in severe metabolic damage.
You are talking about losing more than a pound a day, every day for 3 months.
He didn't have the luxury of negotiating with biology. He had to completely alter his relationship with physical pain and caloric deficit.
And he achieved this through a daily routine he ominously called the dungeon. We have to break this down because it defies belief.
It was a regimen of self-imposed torture. The alarm would go off at 4:30 a.m. He would immediately get on a stationary bike for 2 hours.
While wearing heavy sweatsuits, right?
Yes. Keep in mind, he is doing this while wearing heavy layers of sweatsuits to intentionally raise his core temperature and sweat out water weight. After the bike, he would drive to the local pool and swim for 2 straight hours.
Which is wild considering he still had a paralyzing phobia-level fear of the water from his Air Force days. He is internally panicking the entire time, but he forces himself to keep swimming.
Exactly. After the pool, he would go to the gym for high-rep circuit training. We're talking hundreds and hundreds of reps of light weights, purely designed to keep his heart rate elevated and burn maximum calories.
And then back to the bike.
Then he would get back on the stationary bike for several more hours, and when he tried to run, his frame was simply too heavy. A 290-pound man hitting the pavement generates massive kinetic force.
He immediately developed severe shin splints and stress fractures. Micro tears in the bone itself. Every step was agony.
And his fuel for this entire day: a tiny piece of plain chicken breast, some steamed broccoli, and maybe a small scoop of rice. That is it.
He was starving, sleep-deprived, and his body was physically breaking down. But this introduces one of the most vital concepts in the text: callousing the mind.
Right.
He realized that to survive the impending horror of SEAL training, he couldn't just show up with a skinny body. He needed an armored mind.
And you build an armored mind using the exact same biological principles that you use to build a physical callus on your hand.
Right. I was thinking about this when reading the sources. Like, if I work in a comfortable office all day, typing on a keyboard, my hands are soft.
Yeah.
If I decide to go to a gym, grab a sharply knurled steel barbell, and do heavy deadlifts, my hands are going to blister. The skin will tear, it will bleed, and it will hurt like hell.
But if you refuse to stop.
Exactly. If I wrap my bleeding hands around that barbell again the next day, and the next day, my body's cellular structure adapts. It realizes the soft skin isn't surviving, so it generates thicker, denser, hardened layers of skin. It forms a callus.
Eventually, you can grip that exact same rough steel and feel zero pain.
Is he essentially doing that, but with his neurochemistry?
That is precisely what he is doing, and it's a brilliant way to conceptualize it. In our modern, comfort-obsessed society, our minds are like that soft office worker skin. Because we rarely experience true hardship, our psychological threshold for pain is incredibly low.
We tear and bleed at the first sign of minor friction. A bad day at work, a rude comment, a flat tire.
Goggins intentionally sought out friction. He did things he absolutely hated doing, like staring at the black line at the bottom of the pool for 2 hours, purely because he hated doing them.
He was intentionally causing micro tears in his psyche so that it would heal thicker and harder.
It's the ultimate defense mechanism, because motivation is a fleeting, unreliable emotion. It's like a sugar rush from one of those 7-Eleven donuts.
You watch a hype video on YouTube, you feel a surge of dopamine, you work hard for an hour, and then it evaporates.
But callousing the mind creates permanent architecture. It creates obsession and ironclad discipline. He was building a psychological armored car that wouldn't even scratch when life started throwing rocks at it.
And he needed every inch of that armor, because he did it. He lost the 106 pounds.
He had to transcribe entire textbooks by hand just to bypass his trauma-induced learning deficits and pass the military entrance exam.
Which he did, scoring the exact minimum 50 required. He made it to BUDS.
And BUDS is where the calloused mind meets its ultimate crucible, specifically a phase of training known as Hell Week.
Oh man, Hell Week.
5.5 days of continuous, orchestrated physical and mental torment. The candidates are subjected to freezing cold ocean water, endless miles of running in deep sand, carrying heavy logs and boats, and they are allowed a total of maybe 4 hours of sleep for the entire week.
The instructors use sleep deprivation to induce hallucinations. It is a curriculum meticulously designed to break the human spirit.
Most normal, highly athletic men ring the bell and quit on day 1 or day 2. But Goggins didn't just survive Hell Week. Because of severe physical injuries, he had to go through it 3 separate times.
3 times. It's almost medically impossible to comprehend. During his training, the sheer impact of the running caused his kneecaps to literally fracture.
He was running on broken legs, wrapping them tightly just to keep the joints somewhat stable.
He contracted pneumonia from the freezing water, too. The text notes that the environment is so lethal that a man in his class, John Scope, actually died from severe pneumonia.
It is a razor's edge between graduation and death.
But in the absolute darkest depths of that suffering, running on broken bones, coughing up fluid, Goggins discovered a psychological weapon, something that allowed him not just to survive the screaming instructors, but to completely dominate them.
And this brings us to a concept the text calls taking souls.
Taking souls. It's a provocative phrase, and we need to define it carefully. It is a concept of psychological warfare, but it is not about vengeance. And it is certainly not about physical violence.
No, not at all. Taking someone's soul means completely dominating the narrative of a situation. It means performing so ruthlessly well, enduring so much more than your oppressors thought mechanically possible, that you actually break the will of the people trying to break you.
The sources detail an iconic story that perfectly illustrates this, and I want to paint the picture. It's the middle of Hell Week. Goggins is assigned to Boat Crew 2.
The Smurf crew.
Yeah, in BUDS, they group the guys by height to carry the heavy inflatable boats on their heads. Boat Crew 2 was the Smurf crew, the shortest guys in the class.
Yeah.
They were the misfits, they were exhausted, and they were struggling badly.
And there was a particular instructor they called Psycho Pete.
Psycho Pete. Psycho Pete smelled blood in the water. He decided his mission for the day was to make Boat Crew 2 quit. So he isolates them. He is torturing them in the freezing Pacific surf, making them lift this massive sand-filled boat over their heads, drop it, lift it, drop it over and over again.
The guys in the crew are groaning, their eyes are rolling back in their heads, their muscles are failing, they were totally destroyed.
Psycho Pete is standing there, arms crossed, just waiting for them to break. He is waiting for them to ring the brass bell, which is the signal that you quit. He is trying to systematically extract their dignity.
But Goggins, in a moment of clarity amidst the delirium, realizes that if they stay in this victim headspace, they are done. They will all quit. So he decides to completely flip the script.
He rallies his crew. He starts screaming at them, but not in pain and defiance. He gets them hyped up.
Yeah.
Instead of crumbling under the weight, they lift that heavy boat high above their heads. They lock out their trembling arms, and they start screaming right back at the instructor.
Goggins yells, "Who's going to carry the boats?"
And the crew screams back, "We are!" They take the pure agony they are feeling and weaponize it into power, and Psycho Pete just stops. He is confused. He is intimidated. He literally turns around and walks away to find another crew to harass.
Think about the deep psychology of what just happened. This is the ultimate inversion of a power dynamic.
Yeah.
When someone is intentionally trying to inflict pain on you to break you, their entire power structure relies on your suffering. Your wincing, your crying, your weakness, that is their fuel.
If you smile at the pain, if you look them in the eye and ask for more, you strip away their power entirely.
You take their soul because they realize in that exact moment, they do not possess the tools to break you.
But hold on, let me push back here. I could hear listeners thinking this, and honestly, I felt it a bit while reading the sources, screaming at an instructor while holding a boat over your head. From the outside, that doesn't look like tactical mastery.
What does it look like?
It looks like a toxic ego trip. It looks like aggressive, performative machismo. Aren't you just playing their dumb game? Why not just put your head down, stay quiet, and survive?
Well, it looks like machismo if you view it through the lens of a peacetime office environment, but you have to look at the context of extreme duress.
Okay, fair.
When you are physically powerless, when you cannot escape the situation, putting your head down and quietly suffering often leads to internal collapse. You begin to internalize the victimhood. Taking souls is about reclaiming your own agency when it has been stripped from you. It's a tool for anyone who is chronically underestimated or bullied.
So if we take this out of Hell Week, how does a normal person use this?
Think about a toxic boss who constantly belittles your work in front of the team, or a harsh academic advisor who tells you that you aren't smart enough for a specific program.
Or a doubting coach who keeps you on the bench because of your size.
Exactly. You don't beat them by arguing with them. You don't beat them by filing complaints or whining. You beat them with undeniable, blinding excellence.
So you outwork them.
You perform so flawlessly, you outwork everyone so dramatically that they're forced to question their own judgment. You make their doubt look foolish. You take their soul by proving them definitively wrong through action.
Okay, I see it now. You make them realize they miscalculated by just being an undeniable force of nature. It's actually a very stoic concept wrapped in intense packaging.
It really is.
So he survives BUDS. He graduates. He becomes Navy SEAL. He proves the statistics wrong. This mental warfare of taking souls is highly effective against external critics like Psycho Pete or Bad Boss. But the story shifts drastically because what happens when the enemy isn't an instructor screaming in your face?
Right.
What happens when the enemy is your own failing internal organs?
That leads us to the year 2005 and a profound shift in Goggins' mission and his understanding of human physiology.
In 2005, Operation Red Wings took place in the mountains of Afghanistan. It was a catastrophic tragedy for the special operations community. Several of Goggins' close friends, his brothers in arms, were killed in action.
He was entirely devastated.
He wanted to do something to raise money for their families, specifically through the Special Operations Warrior Foundation. So he goes to Google and searches for the hardest foot races on planet Earth. He finds something called the Badwater 135.
Badwater is legendary. It is a 135-mile continuous foot race that starts in Death Valley, California, the hottest place on Earth, in the middle of July.
The pavement gets so hot, it literally melts the rubber off the runner's shoes.
Naturally, Goggins thinks that's the one. But you can't just sign up for Badwater like a local 5K. The race director, Chris Kosman, looks at Goggins' resume and tells him he needs to qualify by proving he can run at least 100 miles in a single 24-hour period.
And as fate would have it, there happens to be a qualifying race in exactly 3 days, San Diego 1 day.
We have to keep the physical math in mind here. At this point in his military career, Goggins had transitioned into heavy weightlifting. He was a 250-pound powerlifter.
He had not run any serious long distance in over a year. He enters a 100-mile race with literally zero aerobic training.
And his logistics were laughably bad. He shows up to the track in San Diego with a folding lawn chair, a case of bottled water, some Ritz crackers, and a protein shake.
That's it. No support crew, no specialized running gear, no electrolyte nutrition plan, just a massive muscular frame and raw will.
But raw will can only propel a 250-pound body so far on hard pavement. For the first 50 miles, he muscles through it purely on ego and adrenaline, but around mile 70, the bill comes due.
He hits a physiological wall that is not just painful, it is genuinely medically life-threatening. Let's slow down and really picture mile 70. He's dragging this massive frame around a 1-mile loop track. Every step is sending shockwaves up his shins.
He finally collapses into his folding lawn chair.
And the damage is catastrophic. He has literally broken the small, delicate bones in his feet from the sheer impact of his weight. He has severe stress fractures radiating up his shins.
Yeah.
But the scariest part is what is happening internally.
He is suffering from acute rhabdomyolysis.
Explain what that actually means, because it sounds terrifying.
It is terrifying. Rhabdomyolysis occurs when skeletal muscle tissue breaks down rapidly due to extreme exertion. The muscle fibers literally die, rupture, and release their contents, specifically a protein called myoglobin, directly into the bloodstream.
Okay, and what does that do?
The kidneys are meant to filter the blood, but myoglobin proteins are large and toxic. They begin to clog the microscopic tubules of the kidneys. Goggins was looking down and realizing he was peeing a dark brown fluid like Coca-Cola.
Oh, man.
That is the visual marker of kidney failure. His body is actively shutting down to save itself.
Every biological alarm bell, every klaxon in his nervous system is screaming at him to stop. Stop, or you will die.
But this is exactly where we encounter one of the most famous takeaways from the text, the 40% rule.
Right. Sitting in that chair, hovering on the edge of kidney failure, Goggins made a discovery that challenges everything conventional science tells us about human endurance. He realized that when your brain screams that you are completely empty, that you have absolutely nothing left to give, you are actually only at 40% of your maximum physical capacity.
To understand how this is possible, we have to look at the central governor theory of the brain. Goggins uses a mechanical analogy of a high-performance sports car.
Like a speed limiter.
Exactly. You might buy a car with an engine capable of going 160 miles per hour, but the factory installs a software limiter, a governor, that automatically cuts the fuel and stops the car from exceeding 110 miles per hour.
Right, to ensure the engine never operates close to the red line, preventing it from blowing up.
Evolution wired the human nervous system in the exact same way.
So the brain's primary job isn't to help us achieve our goals. Its primary job is purely survival. It hoards energy.
Precisely. When you start pushing hard, your muscles produce metabolites, lactic acid, hydrogen ions. These trigger sensory neurons that shoot distress signals up your spinal cord via the vagus nerve directly to the brain.
And the brain panics.
The brain receives these signals and panics. It artificially induces the sensation of agonizing pain and extreme fatigue to force you to stop moving, ensuring you always retain a massive reserve of energy just in case a predator jumps out of the bushes.
Here's where it gets really interesting. So the pain you feel at 40% is not a biological stop sign indicating imminent mechanical failure. It's a fabrication. It's just a warning light on the dashboard. It's the governor saying, hey, we're using a lot of fuel. You should probably slow down and find a couch.
Exactly. The governor is actively lying to you to protect you. The fatigue is largely an emotional response generated by the brain, not a purely muscular deficit.
So how do you bypass the governor?
You cannot just jump from 40% to 100% in one day. If you do that, your tendons will snap and your heart will give out. You have to negotiate with the governor. You dial it back by pushing 5 to 10% further every single time your brain begs you to quit.
So if your brain says you can only do 10 push-ups, you do 11.
Right. If it says run 3 miles, you run 3.1. You gradually recalibrate your mind's baseline of what is acceptable.
Okay, I love the theory. Knowing you have 60% left in the tank is an incredibly empowering concept. But let's bring it back to reality. When you are sitting in a lawn chair, your kidneys are failing, you are peeing blood, and the bones in your feet are literally grinding together with every twitch. How do you actually stand back up? How do you access that hidden 60% when you are drowning in absolute blinding agony?
That is the pivotal question of the entire 100-mile race, and it introduces another crucial psychological mechanism, the cookie jar.
The cookie jar. I love this visual. Let's set the scene. Goggins is at mile 70. He has 30 miles left to qualify. He couldn't look forward to the finish line.
The thought of running 30 more miles on broken legs was impossible for his brain to process.
If he thought about the future, he would have quit instantly. So instead of looking forward, he looked backward.
This relies on understanding what trauma does to memory. During acute physical stress or trauma, the sympathetic nervous system goes into overdrive. When this happens, the brain suffers from a kind of temporary amnesia regarding its own strength and resilience.
You literally forget what you are capable of because the current sensation of pain is so overwhelmingly loud, it crowds out everything else.
So Goggins creates a mental vault, which he affectionately calls the cookie jar. Inside this jar is a meticulously cataloged history of every past struggle he had ever overcome.
Sitting in that chair, he closed his eyes, reached into his mind, and pulled out a cookie. He remembered the terrified little boy in Buffalo. He remembered teaching himself to read when the entire educational system said he was dumb.
He remembered the starvation of dropping 106 pounds in 90 days. He remembered smiling at Psycho Pete and surviving 3 hell weeks.
These memories function as far more than just a quick motivational morale boost. They are hard, undeniable, historical data points. He was presenting proof to his panicked brain that he had survived worse.
When his brain's governor was screaming, "We're dying, stay in the chair," he used the cookies to logically reply, "No, look at the record. We have been in hell before and we survived. We are David Goggins."
It's evidentiary proof of his own badassery. So, fueled by this historical data, he looks at his wife, who is crewing for him. He has her take rolls of silver duct tape and aggressively wrap his broken ankles and feet, just binding the bones together.
Just using duct tape like a medical cast.
He grips the arms of the lawn chair. He stands up. He screams in absolute agony. He starts to hobble. Then he begins to shuffle. And eventually, incredibly, he starts to run again.
And he runs the remaining 30 mile.
Finishing 101 miles in a total of 19 hours and 6 minutes on 0 training.
It remains one of the most unbelievable feats of mental override over physical reality ever documented.
So, right now, I want to ask you, the listener, what is in your cookie jar? Seriously, take a mental inventory right now. Have you survived a devastating breakup that you thought would break you? Did you pass a licensing exam you were absolutely certain you were going to fail?
Have you overcome an illness, walked away from a toxic job, or survived a period of deep, suffocating depression?
I strongly advise you to physically write these victories down. Big or small. Write them down on paper and put them in your own metaphorical cookie jar. Because when life strikes, when you hit your own mile 70 and you want to quit, you need that historical data ready to deploy to prove your own strength to yourself.
It is a vital tool for preparation because Goggins survived that San Diego race, and he eventually went on to not just run, but dominate the Badwater 135.
He finished 3rd overall in his 2nd attempt.
Exactly, and conquer races like the Ultraman in Hawaii. But operating at this elite, extreme level isn't just about raw, brute force endurance and screaming through pain. As he progressed in his career, he realized that to be truly exceptional, it requires forensic-level analysis and microscopic time management.
Which brings us to a fascinating shift in the narrative. We move from raw suffering to cold logistics. Sectioning out his life, he developed what the sources call structuring the grind and the anatomy of failure. because you do not accomplish a resume like his by just winging it and hoping for the best.
Not at all. He became obsessed with scheduling. He points out a very simple, undeniable mathematical equation. There are exactly 168 hours in every single week.
Yeah.
When people casually say, I don't have time to work out, or I don't have time to read, or I don't have time to start a side business, it is almost always a lie.
It's a complete lie. He advocates for auditing your life in brutal 15-minute increments. If you actually sit down with a notepad and track your time for 3 days, you will be horrified by how many hours are lost to the ether.
Scrolling on social media, watching mindless television, or just staring into space, transitioning between tasks.
He demands that you eliminate multitasking entirely. Focus intensely on one single task in its dedicated block of time. And crucially, I found this fascinating given his reputation, he schedules and locks in his rest just as fiercely as his work. When it's time to recover, you rest completely. No half working while checking emails.
This meticulously structured approach is what allowed him to attempt his next massive, seemingly impossible goal, breaking the Guinness World Record for the most pull-ups completed in 24 hours. At the time, the record stood at an astonishing 4,020 pull-ups.
Just processing that number makes the lats in my back spasm. 4,020 pull-ups. And the story of how he achieved this is the absolute perfect masterclass in how to handle public failure. Because he doesn't just casually try to break this record in a private gym, he goes on national television.
He is live on the Today Show in New York City for his first attempt.
And he fails. He fails spectacularly in front of millions of people. The portable pull-up bar the studio set up was wobbly and poorly constructed.
Because it lacked stability, he was forced to waste massive amounts of core energy just trying to stabilize his swinging body.
The friction from the bar is violently tearing the skin off his hands. He ultimately has to stop at around 2,500 pull-ups. He packs his bags and goes home a failure on live TV.
Most people would be completely devastated by that level of public humiliation. They would instantly generate excuses to protect their ego. They would blame the equipment, they would blame the producers of the show, and they would walk away, declaring the attempt a fluke.
But Goggins borrows a critical concept from the military, the after-action report, or AAR. In the military, after every mission, whether it is a resounding success or a catastrophic failure, the team sits down and conducts an AAR.
You strip away all the emotion, all the shame, and all the ego, and you look at the failure purely as clinical data.
He acts like a forensic scientist on his own failure. He figures out exactly what went wrong. The bar was too weak. The gloves he wore created the wrong kind of friction. The pacing was too aggressive early on. He fixes the logistics.
But then he attempts it a second time in Nashville, Tennessee. And he gets to 3,207 pull-ups, and his body completely fails him again.
He gets rhabdomyolysis for a second time, but even worse, he develops compartment syndrome in his right arm.
We should explain compartment syndrome because it highlights the extreme physical danger he was in. Muscles are encased in a tough, fibrous membrane called fascia. Fascia does not stretch easily. When a muscle is overworked to that extreme degree, it swells and bleeds.
Because the fascia won't stretch, the pressure inside the muscle compartment skyrockets.
It eventually cuts off all blood flow to the tissue. If left untreated, the muscle tissue literally dies and amputation is required. He had to stop to save his arm.
2 massive, painful public failures. And I have to ask the question that any sane person would ask. Why keep going? Why not just accept that 3,200 pull-ups is amazing and move on?
Because the after-action report mentality dictates that failure maps the exact edges of your current capacity. Failure is a GPS coordinate.
A GPS coordinate.
If he had succeeded on try number 1, he would have learned absolutely nothing about his own limits or his biomechanics. The failures forced him to evolve. He became a scientist of his own physiology. He studied his lactic acid threshold. He built custom foam pads for the pull-up bar to save the skin on his hands. He bought a perfectly rigid structural bar, and he rigorously controlled his rest periods down to the second.
And the result of that forensic analysis. On his third attempt, equipped with all the data harvested from his brutal failures, he hits 4,030 pull-ups in exactly 17 hours. He absolutely shatters the Guinness World Record with hours to spare.
It proves that failure is the most common, yet most universally ignored gift we are given. Failure tells you exactly what you need to fix to become better.
Okay, we've covered an insane amount of ground. We've gone from severe childhood abuse to weight loss to Hell Week to 100-mile races to world records. But I want to synthesize this. What does this all mean for us, for the listener who isn't trying to become a Navy SEAL or run through Death Valley?
Are we just supposed to suffer forever without ever celebrating?
Yeah, do we just run from one painful goal to the next until our hearts give out?
This is a crucial philosophical distinction, and it brings us to the concept of being uncommon among uncommon. Goggins realized that true peace, the deep existential peace of knowing exactly who you are, isn't found sitting in a hammock on a beach. It is found in the absolute certainty that you haven't settled.
It's the knowledge that you didn't leave anything in the tank.
He has a rule. If you become the best in your group, you are in the wrong group. When he became a Navy SEAL, he was an uncommon man, but then he looked around the SEAL teams and saw pockets of complacency even there. So he pushed to go to Army Ranger School and graduated with honors. Then he pushed for Delta Force selection. Then he pushed into the world of elite ultramarathons.
The victory isn't the plastic trophy at the end of the race. The victory is the callus itself. It's the continuous, never-ending evolution of the self. And that brings us to the ultimate philosophical takeaway of David Goggins' entire life. It is a thought experiment from the sources that will absolutely haunt you in the best way possible.
It's a profound concept he calls the metaphysical judgment day.
Right. I want everyone listening to truly imagine this scenario. You live your life, you have your job, you watch your shows, you go on your vacations, and eventually, at a ripe old age, you die. You pass into the afterlife, and you meet your maker God, the universe, whatever spiritual entity you believe in. And this entity is sitting at a desk with a clipboard. You walk up, and you're handed a piece of paper to read.
You look at the paper, and it lists the details of an incredibly magnificent life. It describes an Olympic-level athlete. It describes a brilliant innovator who changed their field. It describes a profound leader of men and women. It describes a warrior who finally, definitively broke the cycle of generational trauma in their family.
You look at this list, you read these incredible accomplishments, and you look back up confused. And you say, "I'm sorry, but there has been a mistake. You have the wrong file. That wasn't me. I was just a regular person. I worked in a cubicle. I paid my taxes. I tried to be nice, and I died a quiet death."
And God looks back at you with profound sadness in his eyes and says, "I know, I don't have the wrong file. That is who you could have been. That was the potential I gave you, but you were too afraid of the pain to become it."
That thought is terrifying. Goggins' greatest fear, and the central thesis of these sources, is that leaving your potential on the table is the ultimate tragedy. The goal of life is to reach the absolute end, battered, heavily calloused, physically and emotionally exhausted, and have the list your creator holds perfectly match the life you actually live.
Squeezing every single drop of potential out of your soul before the clock runs out.
So, as we wrap up this deep dive into the sources, I want to leave you with one final lingering thought. The next time your alarm goes off in the pitch black of the morning and the house is cold, the next time your legs are burning on a run, the next time you look in the mirror and your brain starts generating a soft, comfortable excuse, ask yourself two words: what if?
What if I go just one more mile? What if I study for just one more hour? What if I endure the pain and prove every single one of them wrong?
Are you willing to endure the fire required to meet the person you are actually supposed to become?
Because that magnificent person is waiting for you, but they are standing just on the other side of your comfort zone.
Exactly. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the sources. I highly encourage you to go find a mirror today, turn on the harsh lights, take a hard look at yourself, and start the work. We'll see you next time.